Hello again everybody, I'm Ben McCallum and welcome to another video tutorial for Cryptical Photography Studio. Today I'm going to give you all the information you need to know on how your ISO, your aperture and your shutter speed work together. Now for today I'm actually really not going to be using any cameras. I do have a lens here to show you. I'm using cups and water. So your comments are going to be the things that let me know whether this has worked or not. So please comment and let me know. If it doesn't work, I'll try again, but I'm fairly confident it will. So I'm going to start off by telling you all how the aperture works on your camera, because there are three sections within your camera which determine whether your photograph is going to work or whether it's not. So we have the aperture, the timing value, also known as the shutter speed, and the ISO, which is the image sensitivity of your image sensor. So starting off with this, I'm going to start with the aperture, which refers to the hole within your lens which determines how much light is let through into your camera. So this is an old school lens, this one, and this is all manual. So what you'll see, I've just got to make sure I point this in the right direction, that when this is at its fully open, it gets a really big hole and lets a lot of light through. And then if we change it to its other setting, it goes to a really small hole which lets basically no light through. So what this means is this is limiting the speed in which your camera can take a photo, because your photo needs a certain amount of light given the conditions that you're in to take that photo. So it needs to get all of that amount of light. It will be the same whether you have an open hole or a small hole, so that will end up determining the size of the hole will determine the shutter speed that you need to use. So a big open hole, which is actually going to go against what you think, a big open hole is actually the smaller of the numbers. So let's, for argument's sake, that this is an f4, so it's letting lots of light through. And at its smallest setting, this is f22, which lets basically no light through. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how this affects the shutter speed on your camera. So this is the first of the three areas which determines how you need to set up your camera to take the photograph. Now, I have two cups here. I have an f4 and an f22. So the f4 has a very big hole in it, and the f22 has a very small hole in it. Now, what I'm going to show you, I have two cups here which are full of the same amount of water. Now, this water here represents the light that you have and the light that needs to go through your lens to actually make the photograph work. So this is going to be constant. Given the conditions don't change, this will be the same. So if we use the f4, which has the very large hole, and we get the amount of light that you need to put through, this will change the speed in which you need to set up the shutter or the timing value on your camera. So what you'll see at f4, if we pour that amount of light in, straight through, and if you consider that the speed in which that water went through is the amount of time that you need to actually take that shutter speed, we'll just guess that at, say, a second. Now, if we put this back, I'm going to put this cup away just to get it out of the way, and we take the f22, which has a very small hole, and we pour the same amount of water, which represents the same amount of light, straight through, you'll notice that it takes a lot longer for you to take the photograph. So that means that the higher the number on your aperture or your lens, that means the longer you need to take the shutter speed. So that one there was 1 second, and let's say this one here was 4 seconds. So that gives you an indication of how the hole within your lens determines the shutter speed. So they're the first two areas within this that you need to know how they interact together to take the photograph. Now, I'm going to get rid of the f4 and this empty cup to make life easy. I'm going to take you on to the next step, which is the ISO. Now, the ISO refers to the image sensitivity of your camera. Now, what you'll know, if you used to use film cameras, you could buy film in an ISO of 100, 400, and so on. What this refers to is how quickly your camera reacts to the light that is there. So let's say we have two ISOs here. We have an ISO of 100 and an ISO of 400. With an ISO of 100, given the light conditions don't change the same, so this is the same day, you take these photos 2 seconds apart and nothing's changed. At an ISO of 100, your camera needs this much light to take the photograph. Now, as you can imagine, if you try and pour all of this water through a small hole, it's going to take a long time to take the photograph, as opposed to saying an ISO of 400, where it takes a lot less, because if you grab that water and you put it through the same hole, it takes less time. So I'm just going to show you that. It's fairly straightforward. So let's say we grab the ISO of 100. Now this represents how much light that your image sensor needs to record the image. So we pour that through again, and it takes quite a lot of time for it to actually take the photograph. Now, if you're in an area where you need to take sports photography and you need to have that setting of your hole within your aperture, which I'll explain to you on another video. If you want to find out what I'm talking about, you want to look for depth of field. Now, what that does is this large amount of water takes a slow photo, so that can do one thing. But if you want to do a sports photograph and you need a little small hole and you need a really fast photograph to capture the moment it happened, you need to increase your ISO. So if we increase the ISO to 400, it takes far less time to take the photograph. So that adjusts the shutter speed as well. So now we've covered the aperture, which refers to the size of the hole within the camera. Now the shutter speed refers to the amount of time that you need to leave your shutter open. So from start to stop, how fast you need that to be to actually take a correctly exposed photograph, and the ISO. So what you need to now know is if you want to get a certain type of photograph, you have to take those three sections into consideration. The aperture, which affects the depth of field. I haven't created this video yet, but it will be up for you next week. Also, you have to take into consideration the shutter speed. Now, the shutter speed refers to the time in which you take the photograph, and then, of course, the ISO, which refers to the image sensitivity of your camera, which will in turn affect the shutter speed as well. So it's like a little triangle. They all affect each other, and you need to get your head around how they all work and how they interact, or otherwise you're never going to be able to progress, because these are the three basic principles of how your camera works. Now, as I said, cups and water, I hope it worked. I hope I've helped you out. As I said, please comment. It'll let me know whether it's worked or not. It seems simple in my head, but I know what I'm talking about because I've been taking photographs for years. I hope I simplified it in a good way, not a bad way, but that's another video for Cryptical. We'll have more videos up for you shortly, and any of the comments you want to leave are all appreciated, good or bad, doesn't really matter. We're happy to hear them all, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.